Hey guys, welcome to the Commander Lounge. Today we've got for you another Pauper deck, deck tech. It actually, I might be the first one to pioneer this deck. I don't know if someone's already built this before, but I honestly, one night I just went to my Pauper box. By the way guys, if you guys are into Pauper, you guys should honestly you guys should probably think about having your own like kind of box collection for all of your Pauper staples or any of the commons that you think are powerful enough for Pauper, because you know I really don't feel like this format is fully discovered yet. You know, it's fully established yet. I feel like there's a lot of room for brewing in it right now, and especially now that it's pulling in more popularity through, like, you know, having tournaments and GPs and stuff. I feel like this is the perfect time to explore this format and figure out, you know, different types of builds. I think it's the perfect time to brew. I honestly, when I went to my Pauper box and I was looking for something new to build, I actually came back to the card Exhume, because that card is just super powerful for common. And while I was looking at that card, I was like, okay, now how are we gonna do this? Because if you guys have seen my one video in my channel, it is actually, and I actually put together a Pauper Exhume, you know, reanimate deck, which actually basically the deck heavily relied on Exhume. It did that, or it transmuted to get Exhume, and that was it. But the only problem with that deck is after sideboards, it usually would just fail to like a card like Relic of Progenitus or Tormod's Crypt. But you know, when I came back to Exhume, I was like, you know what other backup ways can we do to get big fat creatures out? And then I came to the realization that, you know what, maybe Tron would be a better, a good backup way to do it. It's good because it takes me away from my graveyard strategy. You know, it uses it as a backup. If I can't Exhume, or if I can't use my graveyard strategy, then our backup is just Maker ramping into our big fatty. So this is my Pauper Exhume Tron deck tech. So yeah, as you know, as you guys would think, we're going to start out with the lands, and we're going to start out with the Tron lands. If you guys don't know why Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Tower is called Tron lands, it's because when you assemble all three of them together, they do something really powerful, and that's where the term Tron comes from in the Magic the Gathering world. It's whenever you assemble things together, it's almost like putting all your eggs in one basket almost for a strategy. And you know, it definitely is the same way with lands. So Urza's Power Plant only taps for 1 colorless, but if you control a mine and a tower with it, it taps for 2 colorless. Same thing with Urza Mine. If you control, it taps for 1 colorless originally, but if you control a power plant and a tower, it taps for 2. Now, Urza's Tower is a little different, because even though it adds 1 colorless like all the other ones, if you have a power plant and a mine, it taps for 3 additional mana. So if you tap all 3 of these together, you can generate 7 mana, which out of 3 lands, that's netting you 4 extra mana, which is huge. So, you know, in this strategy, we're either going to be dumping stuff into the graveyard early to Exhume out a big creature, or we're going to be trying to assemble Tron as quick as possible to bring out a big creature to threaten the early game, to, you know, threaten to win the early game. So yeah, let's get into the other lands. Next we have Unknown Shores. By the way, this is a Rakdos deck. This is a black-red deck. So Unknown Shores is pretty good. It's actually really important in this deck, because we want to make sure late game that we can make sure to at least be able to tap for 2 of any color we want. And Unknown Shores is a nice way, especially because we can tutor up this. I'll show you later. I'll show you a little bit a card that tutors up lands. You can tutor up later game to make sure you can fix for anything you want to cast, which is important. So that's why we run 2 of those. Next we run Bloodfell Caves. Just a great card. It gains you a life. It taps for the colors I need, so we run a playset. And next is the Rakdos Guildgate. Once again, taps for both colors. And, you know, unfortunately they enter the battlefield tapped, so you're not going to be doing turn 1 things usually. You're never going to be dumping turn 1 unless you start out on the draw and you have you start with like Exhume and 2 lands, and then you can actually just not even play a land, dump Ulamog's Crusher in the graveyard, then Exhume on turn 3. A lot of times you're going to be aiming to Exhume on turn 3 or Tron on turn 3. It's not always going to happen, but there's a lot of ways to try to get you there faster. Expedition Map is one of those ways to get you to Tron faster. If you guys are playing Tron, you guys need to play Expedition Map. You know, you play it early on turn 1, You pay 2 to sacrifice it, to search your library for a land, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is a big reason why so many people get turn 3 Tron naturally. Is because of Expedition Map. You play Power Plant turn 1, tap it, play this, then play Tower turn 2, and then sacrifice it. At the end of the other person's turn, grab the mine, and then you got 7 mana on turn 3, which is insane. So we run a full playset because that's super important. Next is Faithless Looting. Another reason why I felt like this was a good strategy to go for Tron, even though we don't have, Ancient Stirrings, which is a fantastic way to dig for Tron lands. We do have a lot of ways to dig. And that is huge because we want to find the answers we want to do while we're playing this deck. Because we have 2 alternate strategies, because we have either reanimate early or mega ramp early, you're almost in this balancing act of figuring out what to actually do first. And I feel like it's super important to run Faithless Looting and like other cards that not only does it dump cards into the graveyard, sets you up for Exhume, but it digs you into those potential Tron pieces to Mega Ramp. That's why I run Faithless Looting, just great. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and it has a flashback so I can use it again. Guys, once you assemble Tron, Faithless Looting is great to flashback. It is fantastic to get exactly what you want when you want. So yeah, 4 Faithless Lootings. And next, one of our few ways to interact is Lightning Axe. We don't run too much interaction because we are mainstreaming trying to assemble a combo, whether it's exhuming from the graveyard or assembling Tron. These decks usually they you know what? I'm not even gonna get to it. We're just gonna get into Lightning Axe. Lightning Axe is great in this deck because it only casts 1 mana to deal 5 damage to target creature, but you know what? It's really cool because as an additional cost, you have to discard a card, which keeps us on our reanimation plan, discarding our big creatures to reanimate later. But once you assemble Tron, you only actually have to pay 6 mana to deal 5 damage to target creature, which some people may think that's a lot, but in Tron, if you really want to hold on to cards in your hands, you don't want to dump, and you really want to sandbag a lot of lands and cards that you don't want to do for future Faithless Lootings or Tormenting Voices, you can actually just hard cast it from your Tron assemblation or whatever. So it's really good. I actually ran 2 originally, but just today I added the 3rd one because I feel like it's so important to get away from early aggression, keep people away from their early aggression strategy because that's kind of what we lose to. Next is Prophetic Prism, another card that's pretty important in any Tron deck. It's really good because it replaces itself right away, keeping your hand full. But it can tap your early Tron pieces for any color mana, which is important for us to cast our spells. So if this is a good card that kind of keeps you from just missing out on lands and all that stuff. You don't have to you can start out with just Tron lands and not have to worry about getting colors right away if you have Prophetic Prisms. It's huge. Next is Tormenting Voice. 2 mana, discard a card, good for reanimation strategy. Draw 2 cards, good for digging for Tron pieces. Why not? Unfortunately, I don't have all the same version, but I got 2 foils. It's pretty cool. But great card for the strategy. Next, Exhume, the namesake of the deck. Probably one of the most powerful Pauper cards. 2 mana, sorcery speed. Each player chooses a creature card from his or her graveyard and puts that creature into play. Now, guys, this card's super powerful, especially in the early game, but later game, you have to be careful because sometimes you could actually help them out more than you help yourself out. Like you bring back an Ulamog's Crusher and they bring out something that can either, keep them from attacking for a combat or you could actually get behind, or you can bring out their last flying creature they need to get over your head to kill you. So you have to be careful. Sometimes you have to sit on Exhume and turn it into discard fodder for more digging for actual cards you need. So just be careful with Exhume. It's super powerful, but late game it could get you into trouble. So we run a playset of Exhume. Next is Stinkweed Imp. I originally ran 2 in the main, but now I'm running 3. I feel like, once again, early aggression kind of kills us really, unfortunately it kills us really fast because if we can't Exhume really quick, we're in trouble because we've got a Tron then. and sometimes that might take a little bit of time. Stinkweed Imp is a roadblock of a creature, which is great. It has like basically pseudo death touch. Anything it blocks, it's gonna kill, as long as it doesn't have indestructible. And it's a dredge 5, which is huge for our reanimation strategy. It helps us reanimate. Sometimes we won't even worry about the reanimation. Sometimes we'll just dredge 5 because we need Stinkweed Imp at that moment to get away from edict effects, or, you know, once again, get away from early aggression, you know, hurt the early aggro plan. And that's why we run 3 Stinkweed Imps. Next is Gurmag Angler, absolute house in this deck. Because we're dumping a lot of cards in the graveyard, we can a lot of times play this for just 1 black, and it's a 5/5 for 1 black. If you guys don't know what Delve is, you can reduce the amount of colorless this casts by exiling a card from the graveyard. Just make sure you're smart about it, and don't exile your other big creatures. Try not to exile your flashback Faithless Lootings either, unless you absolutely have to. You're going to exile everything else, though. And a lot of times, you know, you pay 1 mana and get a 5/5 out for exiling all the cards you really don't need that you've dumped through, you know, Faithless Looting, Stinkweed Imps, all that stuff from dredging. It's a great card, and it's also cool because right when you assemble Tron, if you have a Prophetic Prism out, you can actually just hardcast it. Just a 5/5, just hardcast it for 7. And it's actually really good to do that. You know, sometimes you'll want to, a lot of times you'll want to, like, you know, early game reanimate Ulamog's Crusher or something, and then pay 1 mana and cast Gurmag Angler while delving away a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, so you can protect your Ulamog's Crusher to an edict effect also. So for that purpose, we run a full playset of Gurmag Angler. Alright, now on to our big things we want to reanimate or cast. Rune Processor's the first one. Really, it's a 7 mana vanilla 7/8. After the sideboard, the actual ability it has could be relevant if you're playing against not Tormod's Crypt, if you're playing against specifically Relic of Progenitus. I know there's some other specific interactions where you can net the 5 life off of processing somebody's well, not processing, but it says when you cast Rune Processor, you may put a card an opponent owns from the exile into that player's graveyard. If you do, you gain 5 life. Once again, you don't always want to bring back their stuff, because sometimes they'll use flashback cards that you might not want to give them back. It just depends on if you're going to die next turn or not, if you need the 5 life. But sometimes it's important. A lot of times it's just a vanilla 7/8, which is still really good if you can exhume that out on turn 3, or Tron that out on turn 3. It's pretty backbreaking for people. So we run a 3 of Rune Processor. Next, another one of the most powerful common cards in Pauper is Ulamog's Crusher. This card is scary, terrifying. Nobody likes to see it, so I like playing with it. It's an 8 mana for an 8/8 Annihilator 2. If you guys don't know what that is, whenever this creature attacks, the opponent has to sacrifice 2 permanents before it even blocks. So that's huge. If you get this out early, a lot of people, most of the time, if they can't answer it, they'll scoop to it. And Ulamog's Crusher has the backlash of having to attack each turn if able, which, to be honest, isn't that much of a backlash. That's exactly what you want to do with it, is attack each turn with it. So we run a playset of Ulamog's Crusher. He's our other guy we want to either, you know, Mega Ramp out to real quick or Exhume out real quick. Now, the last card is Rolling Thunder. It's just a 1/of. Because we're so keyed in on Mega Ramping or reanimating, because we're mainly about bringing big creatures out. This is why I only run a 1/of of Rolling Thunder. But Rolling Thunder, I couldn't, because of the amount of digging that we have, and, you know, the amount, and how we hate early aggression, we just die to aggro sometimes, like really all in aggro decks. It's important to actually have a way to answer all the creatures. The cool thing about this card is after you assemble Tron, it's really good at either killing all the creatures on the board or just fireballing to the face and just winning the game through fireball. It's a great card. This was another later edition. So yeah, that's the main deck. Let's get to the sideboard. Alright, now for the sideboard, we actually run another Rolling Thunder, which is also, it's like my 3rd Electrickery. It's just really good once you Tron into. You can kill a lot of things with it. And also, it's really good in the control matchups. As long as you're not facing Blue-Black Teachings or like Azorius Tron, anything that runs Capsize or a way to bounce permanents back or destroy a bunch of permanents, It's actually really good in the control matchup. So in like Delver matchups, I'll run this. It's a backup. If they destroy all of my pieces and everything, it's really good against Delver because it also can kill all those little 1 toughness things, like all their little fairies. I just really think it's a solid card. I don't think it's worth putting 2 in the main. I think it's worth putting 1 in the side, 1 in the main. But I could be wrong. But yeah, I like that. And then our other early forms of Rolling Thunder. This is the deal with the early aggro, the 1-drops, the elves, everything, tokens. Tokens is going to be more of a thing now that we have Hordling Outburst as common. It's just a super important card. Dealing 1 damage to everything you don't control is amazing. You always, if you're playing red, you should sideboard Electrickery, especially, there's another card, Sorcery Speed, that does the same thing for only 1, but it's a lot better to be able to do an instant speed and overload it in my eyes. So that's why we run up 2 of Electrickery. Next is Duress. Duress is a super important card. I almost mainboard it instead of Lightning Axe because you want to take away people's counter spells. You want to take away people's journeys to nowheres. Pretty much any way that they can turn off your combo or your reanimation plan or deal with your big creatures. You want to be able to say no to that. Get rid of their edict effects. All that. Duress is a very important card. Probably one of the most played sideboard cards, I believe, in this deck. Next is Pyroblast. Pyroblast is when we're dealing with the blue strategies. It's good to just make sure your Exhumes resolves or get rid of, Delvers early, or, just pretty much that, actually. Or if they put like that enchantment that Delvers have now, that 3-mana enchantment, something chains or something like that keeps it tapped down. There's another, we can destroy that and be able to use it, destroy it on their turn, instant speed, and be able to use it right away, the next turn. It's a very important card. Once again, Pyroblast, if you're in red, most of the times you're going to be running at least 2 Pyroblasts in your deck because it's important, because blue's very powerful in Pauper. Next is we're running Ingot Chewers. Ingot Chewers are great against the affinity decks. It's really good because early game, if you guys don't know what it is, 5 mana for a 3/3. You can evoke it for 1. And then, if you guys don't know what Evoke does, you pay 1, and you put it into play, and then you instantly sacrifice it. So it's going to get the ETB effect. Its ETB effect is when it comes into play, destroy target artifact, which is huge. We can just start destroying artifact lands right away to keep them off of their strategy, keep Affinity off their strategy. The cool thing about this deck, though, is because you can evoke it, and then you can invoke it, destroy an artifact land, and then maybe next turn you can actually exhume it. Sometimes it'll be more important to exhume this than a Rune Processor or something like that, and you can destroy another artifact right away, and you'll have a 3/3 to back it up. So it's really cool, and also because you can assemble Tron, you can also hardcast this later game and just destroy destroy an important artifact that you don't want out there. Just hardcasting it, it's great. Oh yeah, and if I didn't mention, guys, another real good reason why it's good to assemble Tron in this deck is because Exhume turns into not only a main strategy but also a backup, because after you Tron, let's say you Tron into an Ulamog's Crusher and they just counter it or they edict it, you can actually just you naturally Tron, you play it out with Tron lands, and then they kill it, counter it. You can actually just use Exhume as the backup and be like, okay, I'll just Exhume it now and bring it right back into play from the graveyard. Alright guys, back to the sideboard. Next is Gorilla Shaman. This comes in with your Ingot Chewers. This card is just absurd against Affinity. A lot of people will just scoop to this card if you play it early enough. Don't play it on turn 1 without an activation, though, because they could just destroy it before you get an activation. You want to be able to bring it out and then just nuke one of their lands right away. So it's really, really good. And the last sideboard card is Chainer's Edict. Chainer's Edict is really good. If we need more removal, or if we're facing up against Boggles, like Hexproof, or anything that's a like another type of Tron strategy, like combo, like Is It Blitz, or what's that turnabout combo, whatever it is, that new combo deck that's out that relies on the one creature that gives, whenever you discard a card, it gives it +0/+4, and then you just switch its power and toughness. That card, you're going to want Chainer's Edict in there. It's really good, especially with the flashback. It's really good once you get Tron. You can actually easily flash it back after you Tron. It's an Edict, Sorcery Speed, 2 mana, Sorcery Speed, sacrifice a creature. It's just great. So yeah, guys, that is my Pauper Exhume Tron deck. I actually played this in a tournament at my local game store. My local game store that they do, it's called Critical Hit Games. Shout out to them. They run actually a Pauper tournament once a month. I think it's the second week of every month. I actually played this in the last one this month, and I actually did pretty good. I went 3-1. I did better than I thought it was, because I thought I was going to do, because I actually thought this deck might have been too cute for Pauper. But it actually showed to be a force to be reckoned with. So if you guys are interested in a Pauper reanimation style deck with the backup of Tron, or opposite, you love Tron and you also want the backup of reanimation, you guys should give this deck a try. It's a little hard to play in the beginning, but once you figure out all the different types of strategies you can do and when to prioritize what type of strategy, it actually is a very, very, very good deck. I feel like it's actually a good competitive Pauper deck, and you guys should try it out. I will have a link in the description below to the deck list, and if you guys like this video, you guys should give it a like, a favorite, maybe subscribe to me, and I hope you guys have a good day. Take it easy. Bobble, bobble.